And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. 1 in 5 people will experience a form of mental illness at some point, and most will be reluctant to talk to a coworker, friend, or family member about their struggle, let alone seek treatment. While you may never experience mental illness firsthand, on today's Open Connection, Lana Greene shares her son's struggle with stigma.
I would describe TJ, when I think of him, I think of the most fun. He was very, very fun and a good sense of humor very early on. He's just very witty. He had his own way of saying things. He was an athlete, so he was in sports his whole life. His older brother was often very upset with him because he made everything look very easy. He would just run to try anything, you know. So those are the sort of things that come to mind when I think of him. I guess it was about grade 11. He tried drugs. He started dealing with, I think he had 3 concussions, and then depression came into the picture, and anxiety, and starting to struggle with those things, and got in a different friend group and dabbled with drugs that most of the kids were doing, and wasn't able to stop, you know. And so we went to a treatment. We were able to get him sort of back on track, back into sports and school, and then, but the depression was still there. Long story short, he got so depressed he wouldn't come out of his room, and I didn't understand it at the time. So it was hard to understand what was going on with him, and he couldn't articulate, you know. And then, then he didn't want to go to sports, and he didn't want to go to school. His brain sort of told him everybody didn't like him. And then he went over actually to Chilliwack to try living there with some family, and ended up having a manic episode. He was admitted into the psych department in a full-on psychosis, and no drugs were involved, and that's when he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and manic depression. But that was something he did not want to have or accept, and then it came back into the self-medicating. So I feel like his brain never fully developed. He was running around in a 20-year-old body with a teenage brain, emotional-wise, you know. He didn't want anything to do with that diagnosis. So it took, he kind of was able to, he moved around and was struggling. He actually moved out here for about 8 months, and then he was doing actually pretty good. He was working, but just got it in his head he needed to go back to Alberta because he could make more money there, and it went really downhill from there into, I don't exactly know, but that's when the drugs came in. The year before he died, he was admitted into the psych ward at the QE2 hospital that I know of 3 times. He was asking for a treatment bed. I went over and we filled out the forms together and went to the treatment place, and were met with 6 to 8 weeks waiting times. So there's no access to treatment when somebody wants it, and it is critical that it's available when they want it. That's one of the barriers to why people aren't accessing the help when they want it. He went and sat there for 8 days in their detox waiting for the treatment bed, and they told him, we actually can't help you here because you need mental health help as well as treatment, which we knew. And the one place in Alberta that does that we were told of, wasn't accepting new people because of COVID. So we phoned from one end of the province to the other, trying to get him a bed, and could not. I found him a place through a contact actually from Terrace, down in southern BC, but because he had some theft and criminal charges, they couldn't accept him out of the province. So it was like this road of he was ready, but we couldn't, the help isn't there when people are wanting it.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. According to the Mental Health Commission of Canada's website, recognizing that you need help and taking the first step is the most important thing you can do for yourself and for people who care about you. Let us return to the conversation with Lana Greene.
For him, in the condition he was in, to fill out, and it's pages of forms to fill out to get into the treatment center, and to have them sort of say things like he's not ready. To me, when someone's filling a form out, they're more than ready. That takes a lot. So he was ready in a lot of moments, and then when you can't access the help, you end up falling back into, you're still in the same situation. You fall back into using drugs again. There was 3 or 4 times that I know of that he went there physically, and the one time he had a little bit of heroin on him and a knife, which anyone living on a street has some sort of weapon on them for protection. It's pretty normal, which he surrendered to them and said, please, can I have a bed? And they phoned the police because of the heroin. So I share that with you as just an example of why people are advocating for decriminalization of small amounts. Had that not been criminal, maybe he could have been accepted that day. I don't know. My son was ashamed that he was stealing. He, like I said, we were very close. He would share things with me that at times I would tell him, I'm your mother, I don't need to know that. Please don't tell me that. So I knew too much. But he told me, when you're living this life, you either have to steal or sell yourself. And he was not willing to do that. So he felt the only way to survive was stealing. So that he was ashamed of doing, but that is the reality. And so yeah, I was actually praying that he would get incarcerated. So possibly I had the belief at that time that when you become incarcerated, you would have access to help if you wanted. I now know that is not true. So it was his very first time in the remand. He was remanded into the New Edmonton Remand Centre on September the 4th. And I truly believed it was the answer to our prayers, because I knew he was ready for some counseling, which is something he was not open to previously, and for help with his substance use and mental illness. It took him a little while. Your brain is injured, even damaged from trauma and substance use, and so in the first weeks he was pretty, I don't even know the word. He phoned me one day and he said, "Mom, I'm having some memories and I don't know if they're true. I need you to tell me what's real and what isn't," and that sort of thing. And then as a little bit of time went on, I could tell his brain was healing. He told me that he was asking for psychiatric counseling and that he was asking for Suboxone to help cravings, because he really intended to, when he was released, to turn his life around.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. According to the Alberta's government website, under the My Health section, bipolar disorder is an illness that can cause behavior so extreme that you cannot function at work, in family or social situations, or in relationship with others. Some people with bipolar disorder have suicidal thoughts. Let us return to the conversation with Lana Greene.
So January 11th, he believed he was getting out that day. And I don't know what sort of a hearing it was, but I know he didn't have a full understanding of the proceedings and what was going on, and he wasn't getting out that day, but he fully believed he was. And I know he had phoned his lawyer distraught and very upset a few times, but she didn't return his call. I believe he spent most of the day in a room alone, not understanding what was happening and finding out he wasn't getting out. I can't speak for what happened or how he was handled. But anyway, I was home and waiting to hear from him, thinking, I wonder if he's going to get out today or what's going to happen. And it was about finally 9 o'clock at night, a strange number from Edmonton was phoning me, and I answered thinking, oh my goodness, he did get out, he's somewhere, and soon realized it was the Edmonton Police Service. And they phoned to double check my address and inform me that a terrace member would be out to talk to me. And at that point I said, is this regarding my son? Because I knew something was wrong immediately, and please tell me. And he wouldn't. They can't tell you on the phone. So I waited 2 hours, knowing, but not knowing. So finally at 11 o'clock, a terrace member came and told me. Obviously a shock. I asked what happened. Immediately flashed and thought somebody hurt him, never in a million years would I have thought he hurt himself. Because we spoke about that quite a lot, and he never wanted to die. So when they said he was found and that it was suicide, I said no. And I still don't fully accept that because I haven't been given any of the answers to know for sure that's what happened. Through his journey, I asked him, I was trying to come to grips with the fact that I thought he was quite possibly going to die of an overdose, because that was something that was happening. He shared he overdosed 16 times, and he was terrified to die, and he couldn't understand himself or explain why he kept doing it. But he always made sure to be around people that had naloxone, and he didn't want to die. So how do you accept that he did this to himself with no explanation? So immediately I asked, being 11 o'clock at night, I sat. I don't really remember if I slept, but in the morning I phoned and I asked why was he in a cell alone, and I was told he was in a COVID unit, and I questioned that because him and I were tested for COVID the same time, just before that, and I knew he didn't have COVID. So I wanted to know why he would be there, and I was told I was going to need a lawyer.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Moms Stop the Harm is a network of Canadian mothers and families whose loved ones who have died due to substance misuse. In this final segment of Open Connection, Lana shares why she joined this organization.
My motivation to come and to keep trying to get his story sort of out there is to shine a light on the place he was in. The only way to force change is to create public outrage. I became a member of the Moms Stop the Harm while TJ was living with substance use. I was looking to try and understand it and learn so that I could be a better mom and communicate with him in a way that didn't cause him more pain or shame. So I thank God I found them. And when I lost TJ, I sort of was leaning in and I kept saying, like, where's the Moms Stop the Harm in Terrace? And they couldn't really find. I think there are members here, but there's no active advocates in Terrace that they could connect me with. And I was seeing all of these events being planned, and I thought, well, they said, you know what, it just takes one. So when you're ready, we'll support you. And so that was the intention, was to rally some people together and have that event. So Moms Stop the Harm is a Canada-wide organization who they advocate, educate, and reduce stigma is what they are trying to do. They offer supports to families who are supporting their loved ones through substance use, and they support families who have lost their loved ones. I believe it was 4 grieving moms that came together and started, but it's definitely grown into a group of families. Although it's called Mom Stop the Harm, it could be a brother, an uncle, a cousin, anybody who's been affected and who wants to get involved or needs support. When I started banging on doors around Terrace, like who wants to do this event? Let's do this. The Kermode Friendship Society. I got put on the phone with a lady named Carla, and we soon discovered she knew my son. She had just moved back here from Grand Prairie, and I believe we used to talk on the phone when I found the shelter, and she remembered my son, and we immediately connected that way, and they just enveloped me into their little group and held me up, and they made it happen. They and the Kisan and First Nations Health Authority and Northern Health, a whole bunch of people came out of the woodwork and made that happen. And it's happening again this year. To your question about the resolution, the petition that I have going on change.org, you can Google justice for the number 4 TJ. The intention with that is to create the public outrage that's needed to force change, because legal action will not change anything. It will only hold them accountable for the wrongdoing that happened with TJ being ignored. So that's the intention with the petition. It took me a long time to say the word justice because I don't believe, I had a hard time with that word, because how is there justice when he's gone? But to me, justice would be that they stop allowing people to be treated that way. So I don't know who needs to get involved, but yeah, we need people to stand up and say that's wrong. I think there's this huge disconnect and misunderstanding of mental illness, and we need compassion. We need to show up, and the remand facility is just in one place where it needs to happen. People need to be treated with dignity and respect wherever you are. You can't just write people off because they made a few bad decisions or got caught up in a lifestyle, or were making decisions with a sick brain. When somebody's heart or their lungs or their kidneys become diseased, people show up to your door with casseroles. When someone's brain gets sick, everyone backs away.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.